I stepped away from our seats for 2 minutes at halftime of a World Cup game, just to hit the bathroom. And by the time I got back, the whole stadium was already staring up at the big screen, watching my wife kiss another man in the 2 seats I paid for. And I need you to hear me when I say that by the time all of it shook out, she was the one standing in my driveway with nothing, while I kept the house and the company and every dollar she'd already spent in her head. Now, hold on. Before I take you into any of this, I really do appreciate you being here with me, giving me a few minutes out of your day. That is not something I take for granted. So do me one thing, would you? Drop the city you're listening from down in the comments, because I actually read them, and I'll call your name out and give you a shout-out in the next one. And if you've got it in you today, that little like and that subscribe are honestly about the only reason a small channel like mine gets to keep going. Okay, so let me back up, because for that screen to hit you the way it hit me, you've got to know where I was standing about 10 minutes before it, and you've got to know one little fact, that those two were both too arrogant to ever go check. Me and Danielle had been married 11 years, 13 together if you count the 2 before, back when we were both kids working in the neighborhood, and I'm from South Philly, born at Methodist, raised off Passyunk, down near Marconi Plaza. Danny grew up maybe 10 blocks from me over near Girard Estate. That's just how it works down there. You don't really meet somebody. You end up with one of the ones who were always around. I run a contracting company. Well, I built one. DeMeo Renovation. That's me, Vince DeMeo. Row-hoom gut jobs, the kind where you take one of these skinny 100-year-old brick houses that's falling in on itself and you strip it to the joists and put it back together. Right. My dad did trim carpentry his whole life, and when he passed, I took the little he left me and I put my own name on a truck. And here is the one fact I need you to keep in the back of your head this whole story, because those two never once thought to. In Pennsylvania, to do my work legally, you carry a home improvement contractor registration with the state, and the bond and the insurance that go with it, and mine was in my name, just mine. My number, my bond, my license to pull a single permit down, at L&I, not the company's, personal to me. Everything that let those jobs legally exist hung off my name alone. Hang on to that. That is the whole story, and nobody in it but me knew it. My partner was Bobby Serpico, best friend since St. Monica's, 2nd grade, altar boys together in my wedding. He ran the crews and charmed the clients, the part I'm no good at, so I gave him 40% and kept the 60, and I kept that registration in my own name, not because I was planning for anything, I swear I wasn't, but just because that was always how it was. Best decision I ever made, and I didn't even know I was making it. And Danny ran the office. The books, the payroll, every deposit, all of it went through my wife. I trusted her with the money completely because she was my wife. That's the whole reason. It's your wife. So this past June, the World Cup comes to Philly. Biggest thing this city's seen in years. Games at the Link, right down the sports complex where I've spent half my Sundays, my whole life. And I got tickets. The U.S. were playing a group game here at home, and I wanted to take my wife and do something big, because 11 years in, you forget to do the big things. We tailgate in the lot with a couple guys off my crew. I'm grilling sausage and peppers off the back of the truck. Danny's got a jersey on, she's laughing, and I keep going back to that 1 hour in that parking lot, her head thrown back laughing at something one of the guys said, because that was the last hour of my whole life before I knew. The last hour I got to be that happy and that stupid at the same time. I just didn't know it yet. We get inside, lower level, off to one side, decent seats I was proud of. First half's a grind, hot as anything, nothing at the half. And Danny says she's fine, she doesn't need anything, so I go hit the bathroom before the second half, because you know how those lines get. 2 minutes, maybe 3. And I'm coming back down the steps toward our row, and the stadium's making this noise. Not a game noise. There's no game. It's halftime. It's this laughing, oh, kind of roar. And everybody around me is looking up and to the side at the big screen, phones going up, and I'm thinking, oh, the kiss cam. They do that at the half. And I'm half smiling, looking around to see who the poor sucker is. And then I see her, on the screen, 50 feet tall. My wife. She's got her hand on the side of some guy's face and she's kissing him. And it is not a peck. It's not a caught-off-guard thing. It is a real one. The kind where your whole body already knows the other person. And the crowd's eating it up. Oh, and I'm standing there with 60,000 people, and I look at the screen, and then I look down at my actual seats, mine, the ones I paid for, and there she is in real life doing the exact thing that's on that screen. And the guy, it's Bobby. I want you to sit with that the way I had to because I couldn't do it at first. My brain wouldn't let me. I stood there, and I actually thought, that guy looks like Bobby, before the whole thing came down on me like a wall. It's my Bobby, my partner, my altar boy, the guy who slept on my couch when his marriage blew up, and my wife made him dinner every night, and her, in my seats. On the biggest screen in the city, in front of my whole town. My stomach dropped clean out of me, my hands went cold, my ears started ringing like when you stand up too fast. And the worst part, the part that still gets me, everybody around me was laughing. It was cute to them, kiss cam. They had no clue they were watching my entire life go off a cliff live. I don't even remember getting down to the row. Next thing I'm standing at the end of it, and Danny sees me, and Bobby sees me, and the look on her face, that's what I keep coming back to. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something, like I was the problem. And my voice didn't sound like mine. I go, "What are you doing?" And she does this little thing with her shoulder, and she goes, Don't make a scene, Vince. It's a camera, it's a game. Sit down. Sit down. I look at Bobby, and Bobby can't even look at me. He's staring at the field, and I go, "Bobby." And he just goes, "Vinny, not here, man. Not here. Not here." Like there was ever going to be a good place for it. And you want to know what I did? I sat down. I did. 3 seats for my wife and my best friend, and I watched the second half start because my body wouldn't do anything else. I was so far past angry, I'd loop back around to nothing. The U.S. scored, the whole place went out of its mind, jumping and hugging, and I sat there in the middle of it, feeling like I was underwater watching it happen to some other guy. And somewhere in all that noise, real quiet, I made up my mind. I didn't yell, I didn't flip anything. I just sat there and I decided, okay, you want to do this in public, in front of the whole city where I grew up? Fine. But you two have no idea what you just kicked over, because you never once bothered to learn how a single piece of it actually works. Because everything they were sitting on top of, everything, it was mine. That night we didn't talk. I slept on the couch in the house I rebuilt with my own hands, and I let myself feel all of it in the dark, the whole thing. And then, around 4 a.m, I stopped feeling it, and I started thinking. And when a guy like me quits feeling and starts thinking, that's when you want to be somewhere else. The next morning, Danny comes down all calm and reasonable, sits across the kitchen table, coffee, and she goes, "Look, we've been unhappy a long time, both of us, don't pretend." And then she goes, "I already talked to a lawyer." She'd talked to a lawyer before the game. She goes, "I talked to a lawyer. And I want to do this easy. We split everything right down the middle, the house, the business, all of it, 50-50. That's how it works in Pennsylvania. So let's just be adults about it. Let's just be adults." And I'm telling you, that was almost worse than the kiss. The kiss was hot. A moment, people do dumb things. But this cold coffee table math, her sitting there with the split already worked out before she ever put her hand on Bobby's face on that screen, that told me it was never a moment. It was a plan. They had a plan, and I was the last one to hear about my own life. So I looked at her and I said, "You know what? You're right. Let's be adults. Let's do it clean." And I smiled at her. I have never meant anything less. But here's the part nobody tells you about deciding to fight quiet. You still have to keep living in the house. So for the next couple weeks, me and Danny are under the same roof, passing each other in the kitchen, and I'm playing the beat-down husband who agreed to be reasonable. And she's playing the wife who feels a little bad, but not too bad, and I'll give her this. She was good at it. She'd ask if I wanted coffee. I'd say sure. Inside my head, I'm counting bank deposits, and it nearly slipped once. She's on the phone in the other room one night, low voice, and I hear her laugh, that laugh, the parking lot laugh, and I know exactly who's on the other end of it. And I stood in the hallway with my whole body shaking, my hand flat on the doorframe, this close to kicking the door in and ending it right there in a screaming match that would have handed her everything I knew. And I made myself walk back to the couch, sit down, breathe, not yet. Let her keep thinking she's winning. That was the hardest night of the whole thing, harder than the stadium, just standing in that hallway swallowing it. Because that same afternoon I did two things. First one, I drove down to my accountant, Frank Nardo, does my year-end since day one, old school guy, office on Oregon Avenue with the wood paneling and a fax machine that still runs. I said, Frank, go through the whole company, line by line, quiet, and do it now. And he looks at me over his glasses and goes, Vince, what's going on? And I told him. And this 70-year-old man just kind of went gray and said, oh, kid. 3 days later he calls me, come in. And I sit down across that old desk, and Frank doesn't say a word. He just slides a bank statement across the wood at me. And I go, what's this? And he goes, that's a company account. And I go, Frank, we don't have that account. And he takes his glasses all the way off and rubs his eyes and goes, I know, Vince, that's the problem. It was a second account, a whole other business account across the river in Jersey in the company name that Danny opened and only Danny could touch. And for the better part of a year, deposits that should have come into our main account, job draws, customer money, had been getting peeled. A few grand here, a few grand there, into this Jersey account. Frank tapped the bottom of the page with his pen, this one line, and I looked at the number, and it was north of $90,000. 90 grand. Skimmed off my own company by my own wife, into an account I never knew was breathing. I sat there and I felt sick, but I'm going to tell you, under the sick, I felt something else, almost like relief, because that 90 grand was them handing me a loaded gun. In a Pennsylvania divorce, when a spouse hides or drains the marital money like that, the court calls it dissipation, and judges hate it. She thought she was building herself a nest egg for her new life. What she'd actually built was the exact rope you hang a 50-50 claim with. Second thing I did, I got a lawyer. Not from the neighborhood, because everybody down there knows everybody, and Danny would have heard I was lawyered up before I got back to my truck. I went outside all of it. A woman up in Center City, Rachel Freed, did nothing but high-end family law sharp as a tack. And she let me get the whole thing out, the screen, the coffee table, the Jersey account, and then she asked me one question. She goes, whose name is the contractor registration in? And I said, mine. And Rachel Freed set her pen down and smiled at me and said, okay, Vince, tell me about the business. But I still didn't know how deep Bobby was in it until Manny told me. Manny's my foreman, 9 years with me, would run through a wall for me. Couple days after the game, he pulls me aside at the Tasker Street job, real quiet, and goes, Vince, I got to say something, and I want no part of it. And he tells me Bobby's been going around the crew one at a time, telling them he's starting his own shop, and that when the time comes they should all jump ship to him, that he's taking over the big jobs, and that I was, and Manny didn't want to say it. And I go, say it. Manny? And he goes, that you were just the paperwork guy. And I started laughing. Manny thought I cracked. But I was laughing because, oh, buddy, you stood next to that paperwork for 6 years, and you never read one page of it. And Bobby had the stones to call me that same week. I almost didn't pick up, but I did, because I wanted to hear it come out of his mouth. And he goes, all buddy, Vinny, look, we got to talk like men. This thing with Danny, it happened, it's real. Nobody set out to hurt you, like he was doing me a favor. And then, real casual, he goes, and about the business, cleanest thing is I take the Point Breeze work. And the guys, you keep the smaller stuff. We don't got to make this a war. Keep it civil. Keep it civil. He'd carved up my company on a phone call and was handing me back the scraps like he was being generous. And I just said, yeah, Bobby, let's keep it civil. And I hung up and I sat there a long minute, and I thought, okay, civil. You have no idea what civil's about to cost you. Here was Bobby's plan, and I'll give him this. It was almost smart. Danny takes half the company in the divorce, so I've got to buy her out or sell. Either way, I'm bled dry and done. Meanwhile, Bobby walks out with the whole crew, and the real prize, our two biggest live jobs. A full row of new construction homes over in Point Breeze for a developer named Kaplan, worth more than everything else we had going put together. Bobby takes the men, takes the Kaplan job, opens his own thing, and me and Danny are so busy tearing each other apart in court that by the time I look up, there's nothing left to fight over. And for about 2 days, it almost worked. This is where it nearly all came apart on me, because Bobby moved fast. He went straight to Kaplan and told him there'd been a restructuring, that the Point Breeze job was moving to his new company, and he undercut my price to do it. And Kaplan, who cares about exactly one thing on this earth, and it's the number, was ready to sign. My lawyer calls me, "Vince, I'm hearing your Point Breeze contract might be walking out the door," and my stomach did that stadium thing all over again, that cold drop, because that job was the whole year. Lose Kaplan, and the math goes ugly fast, and then it's her half of a sinking company plus me with no work. And they win. They actually win. So I drove straight to Point Breeze. Kaplan standing in the mud in his golf shirt with Bobby, and Bobby sees my truck pull up and gets this look. I didn't even raise my voice. I walked right up and said, "Mr. Kaplan, before you sign one thing with this man, I got one question. Who's pulling your permits?" And Kaplan goes, "What?" And I said, "The permits. Down at licenses and inspections. Whose name's going on them? Who's carrying the bond on this job? Whose contractor registration is this whole project running under? Because it's a registered number, it's the law. And no number, the city red tags your site, and every one of these houses stops dead. So, whose is it?" And Bobby's face. Bobby didn't have one. He never got his own registration. Never needed to, because for 6 years he'd been standing next to mine. And I turned to Kaplan and said, "It's mine. It's always been mine. He can take my crew, he can take my name off the truck, he can kiss my wife on the big screen at the link, but the day he pulls a permit or bonds a job on his own, he's breaking the law, and any house he lays a hand on without me is a house you can't close on and can't sell. So go ahead, sign with him. And when the city shuts it down, call me. I'll be busy." And I walked back to my truck. Kaplan called me before I got over the bridge. He didn't just stay. He was rattled enough. He asked me to bond a second project for him. Bobby got nothing. And the crew, the guys Bobby swore up and down were going to walk out the door behind him. You know how many actually left? One. One kid, a laborer, who'd been with us 6 months. Everybody else stayed because at the end of the week it's my name on the check, and it always was, and a crew doesn't follow the guy who's charming, they follow the guy who pays them Friday like clockwork for 9 years running. Manny came and found me at Tasker Street and just put his hand on my shoulder and goes, "We're good, boss. All of us. Go do what you gotta do." And I'm not too proud to tell you I had to turn around and look at a wall for a second so he wouldn't see my face. And the video did the rest for me. That 50-foot kiss was all over the internet within a day. The caught on the Jumbotron thing, and it wasn't hard for word to get around who those two people were. In this business, in this town, your name is the whole thing, and nobody's handing a fresh contract to the guy who went internet famous for stealing his partner's wife on camera. Bobby did that to himself. I didn't lift a finger. Then the divorce. We get down to family court at 15th and Vine, and her lawyer comes in swinging equitable distribution. We want half the business, half the house. Rachel just let them talk. Let them get all the way out on the branch. Then she opened her folder. First she laid out the registration and the bond and the plain fact that the entire enforceable value of that company, the thing that let it legally take $1 of work, was personal to me and non-transferable, and that any valuation of her half had to reckon with the truth that without my name the company was a truck and some tools. Their big, scary business number dropped to almost nothing in about 4 minutes. Then Rachel slid the Jersey statements across the table. 91,000 and change. Hidden. Skimmed. Dissipation of marital assets. and she looked at Danny's lawyer and said, "We'll be asking the court to credit every dollar of this against your client's share, and we'll be discussing exactly where it was going and who it was going to." Her lawyer asked for a minute. They put their heads together, whispering, and I watched him explain to her what dissipation means, watched her shake her head, "No, no," and watched him keep nodding, "Yeah, yeah." Rachel didn't gloat. She just folded her hands and waited. And when they came back, all that swing had gone out of his voice, and he goes, "We may need to revisit our position on the business." And Rachel goes, "I think that's wise." And I watched my wife's face do the same thing Bobby's did in that mud, that slow drop. That understanding that the ground she'd been standing on was never there. She got almost nothing. Once you took her hidden 90 off the top and set it against a company that couldn't legally run without me, there just wasn't a 50-50 to have. She walked with her car and her clothes, and the crumbs of the joint account after her own theft came out of it. The house on Wolf Street, the one I rebuilt with my hands, stayed with me and the kids. And I'll be straight with you. I didn't gloat in that room. I just felt tired. There's no winning something like this. There's only getting out the other side. I saw Bobby one more time, months later, at the supply yard down on Columbus Boulevard, the one I've bought from for 20 years. I'm loading joist hangers into the truck, and I look up and there he is at the register, buying a couple boxes of screws, the kind of order a guy makes when he's just some hand on somebody else's crew now, not the man who signs for the whole job. And he sees me. And for a second neither of us says anything, and he goes, "Vinny?" And I just kind of nodded at him, the way you nod at a guy you used to know, and I finished loading my truck, and I left him standing at that counter. That was it. That was the last word between us. 30 years, and it ended at a register over a couple boxes of screws. And then, a few weeks after everything was signed, Danny showed up in my driveway. All that cold from the kitchen table was gone. She was crying, and she goes, "I don't understand how it all went so wrong so fast." And I remembered something she said to me once in a fight months before that I never let go of. She told me I'd always just be a South Philly kid with a truck, like that was the meanest thing she could think of. And I stood on my own front steps, the ones my dad would have been proud of, and I said, "You never once went and found out how any of it worked. You just figured you'd take it." And then I said, "You were half right about me, though. I am a South Philly kid with a truck." Turns out that's the guy who owned everything the whole time, and I went inside and shut the door. And I want to tell you what that felt like, because this is the part that actually mattered. The house was quiet. My kids were asleep upstairs. And I stood in my own kitchen, in the house nobody could take, and I let out this breath I swear I'd been holding since the second I walked back down those stadium steps. My shoulders came down off my ears for the first time in months. The ringing was gone, just quiet, and it was mine, all of it, the quiet and the house and the kids and the life. I don't sleep on the couch anymore. I sleep in my own bed, and I sleep like a rock. So here's the thing I keep chewing on, and I'll leave you with it, and it's not clean, and it's not some line I worked out, it's just true. Everybody in my marriage looked at me like I was the small one, the quiet one, the boring one, who did the paperwork while the fun people did the living. And maybe I was boring. I don't know. But boring is the guy who read the fine print, who kept his name on his own stuff because his father raised him to, and it turns out that guy is the one holding the whole thing in his hand, usually without even knowing it, right up until somebody reaches over and tries to take it. They were so busy being loud they never once asked the quiet guy what he actually had. So keep your name on what's yours, and don't ever let somebody make you feel small for being the steady one. Let them find out the hard way what steady is worth. That's what I did. Thanks for sitting here with me. I mean that.